You see, something's going to happen.
What? What's going to happen?
Something wonderful.
What?
I understand how you feel. You see, it's all very clear to me now.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This is episode, I'm very excited to have another author on, and it's about religion and reality. One of the books that we'll touch on and some other things that he has written, and I definitely think it will fit the show, and I'll have a great chat. But before we introduce him, let me introduce the other rejects. We got Lisa, the Occult Reject Mad Scientist. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Thank you for having me on. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. I first came across Darren when, remember, we were talking, throwing around Whitehead's theories and process philosophy and stuff like that, and I stumbled upon Darren. And when you told me you were having him on, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be a great discussion. So looking forward to it. And thank you all, fellow rejects, for also having me on. So,
of course. No.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And we got Tyrone. What is going on, sir? How are you?
Hey, what's going on? Hey, nice to meet you, Darren. This is going to be an interesting show. This is actually my first time hearing about you, so I'm going to definitely be paying attention. I'm ready to take notes just like always. And, I'm just ready to get it on. So, thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Of course, I appreciate it. And for people that are listening, by the time this comes out, I would assume maybe Tyrone's work is already out by then. Definitely go check out on the Universe Unveiled. My man killed it today with the show on the Anunnaki and on Zachariah Sitchin's work. I definitely suggest to please go check that out. And then we got Ethan Indigo. What is going on, sir?
Very cool. I'm looking forward to checking that out, Tyrone. I've been checking out Tyrone's book, and I'm also a writer, and recent article on occultresearchinstitute.org, and more to come, and excited to hear about Darren's stream of study. Very, very intriguing.
Hell yeah, right? Definitely. And thank you, Ethan. I appreciate it. Do you want to promote any of your books, sir?
The Fourth Initiation is my most recent one, and I've been checking out Tyrone's book, and Ricardo wrote a book too, and a bunch of writers. So this is going to be fun.
Yes, definitely. And finally, to the man himself, Darren. Unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce your last name. I meant to ask you before we recorded, and I was introducing everybody, and I'm like, damn it, I never asked how to say his last name.
It's pretty brutal.
I was like, Iammarino, maybe that's how I was going to say it, but I was like, I don't know. So, Darren, introduce yourself, please. Let everybody know what your deal is. Let any receipts you want to bring. Tell people about your past, what you studied, this and that, or any books. Please let everybody know now.
All right. I'll keep that short. It's not that interesting. My last name, I just go off Iammarino. That's not really how you pronounce it, but it's easiest. So simple that way. I got my PhD at Claremont Graduate University up in LA in philosophy of religion, and I did focus on specifically process theology. I heard that mentioned, Whitehead. I didn't know we'd even really go into that. We'll see. If you want to, I'm happy to go down that.
We may.
But that's a challenging, can of worms. So went there, and then I taught at San Diego State for like 4 or 5 years, and over at USD now, University of San Diego, taught at Claremont School of Theology, and 2 books that maybe we'll get into today. One is Religion and Reality, and that does have a lot of actually process philosophy and Whitehead material in there. And then totally different type of book, maybe we'll touch on it, Lessons from the Afterlife for a Happy Life, goes into like near-death experiences. But instead of exploring whether they're true or not, it's basically just accepting that people are having an amazing transformative experience from these NDEs. So maybe we can utilize aspects of the NDE experience to sort of recreate that without having to actually go through the brutality of the near-death part. So
very interesting.
That's a little bit.
Yeah, when I saw that you did work on that too, I was like, that could be a whole other topic or a show itself. Because we've had people on for NDEs as well. I'm very, very interested in those. I've said it multiple times myself on the show. I even think with, even if you want to take out like magic or ritual magic or occultism, I would even see the shamans are pretty much putting themselves, close to an NDE or death experience to have the experience that enlightened them. So I'm very interested in that stuff. I guess, Darren, what interested you to start getting into these studies? I mean, were you kind of like open to the occult or esoteric? Maybe I know occult sounds worse. Were you maybe open to esoteric stuff like at an earlier age, and that's why you went into like kind of studying this stuff for school?
So I actually came at sort of the occult esoteric stuff a little bit later.
Oh, okay.
So I started off more because I was doing philosophy and religious studies because of the overlap on the big questions, the nature of ultimate reality, meaning of life, the big sort of topics, right? I was into metaphysics, pretty specifically, and theology. And then I have an eclectic interest. So I'm like, hey, I want to start reading all of these occult esoteric books. And I actually have an antiquities collection as well, separate from this. So I have some really rare old occult books.
Something I just want to ask real quick. I know how we were talking about like Plotinus and Plato earlier. Were those people that you were studying when you mentioned that you were into philosophy? Were you already looking into those people then?
Yeah, absolutely.
See, that's really interesting because I mean, I had heard of them when I was a kid, of course, growing up in school. And then, like, I guess, whatever, as life went on, I just didn't think philosophy was important and other things were. And when I came back around getting into the occult, their names are huge and pop up again. So it's interesting how, like, when you find them, or when I was younger and came across them, the occult was nothing to it. It was just philosophy, deep thinking. But then when you get into occultism, or I was in the OTO, their names were big. Like I said, some of them are on the saints list. So I find that just, like, very interesting. I think that's probably why I assumed you must have been involved in the occult or interested in the esotericism prior to this, because of the, how I look at it now.
Yeah, it's interesting with Plato, right? Especially because he's foundational. I mean, that's pretty much like a 101 class. They're going to hit you with a lot of Plato and Aristotle as well, right? But mainly Plato, I would say. And few people are aware, I imagine that all of you probably are, but Platonic thought influences everything. Everything.
I even think it might have had an influence with Kabbalah.
It does everything.
Yeah, it was like, when I started looking at that, I was like, this sounds just like the Supernal Triad. I was like, this is unreal.
Look, Whitehead, just to bring, since Whitehead was mentioned or whatever, process philosophy, he specifically states that, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact quote, right, that effectively history is just nothing but a series of footnotes to Plato, which is at least a half-truth, I would say. I mean, he pretty much lays out, Plato does, a lot of the core issues and arguments that are still talked about today, even in the 21st century in philosophy courses. So, and Christianity, right? Most people, when they think Christianity, they're like, oh, it's against paganism. It's nothing but littered with Neoplatonic, since you mentioned Plotinus, right? Specifically, it has Neoplatonic thought everywhere.
And then if you go by what Plotinus is saying, he's like, I'm not even creating anything new here. I'm just expanding on Plato and trying to make that more understandable.
Yeah. I mean, if he says that, you're right. I mean,
he does.
Who knows if it's true?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was definitely where you need to start there. I'm a big fan of going chronologically, right? I've never understood, like, I have no problem throwing one of my former colleagues under the bus, won't name names, but they weren't too happy about the fact that I was teaching an intro to philosophy class and I had all this ancient material. And then I had medieval philosophy as well in it. And they were basically like, why are you teaching this? Jump straight into Rene Descartes. Just start there and move forward. And I was like, all right, let's just throw out, I guess, thousands of years. Why not?
Yeah, right.
So it's interesting. In the world of philosophy, there's definitely like camps. People that like Whitehead, I mean, I think the people like Whitehead are pretty open-minded, generally, but like a lot of people don't like Whitehead. Let me put it that way. And
what do you think the inclination for that perspective is, that they want to start at Descartes and not look at the Greeks and so on?
To answer that partially, I think it's because the medieval period, at least specifically, has so much of the theology, right? And so they don't want to talk about arguments for against existence of God. A lot of these people are more atheist, right? So maybe they think it's a waste of time. This person did tell me that it would be okay to have 1 week on ancient Greek thought. I'm like, oh wow, 1 week. All right, I guess that covers it. Just jam everything in that. But I don't know beyond that. It's a good question, Ethan. I'd love to get inside their head to know why. But
I wonder how much of it is because it's so contested, and that it's not just two camps of thought, pro or for. It's like all these little sub camps of thought. And I think it also has roots in who influenced Plato. And there's so many contested theories about Pythagoras. There's so many contested thoughts of Empedocles. And you're having these ancient philosophers also feed into some of Plato's theories and thoughts. And if you already have camps from those two greats, now you have Plato, and it's too complicated. It's like a girl's brain. It's like too many things going on at the same time.
You're definitely right. Pythagoras, I mean, there's no denying that he's a massive influence on Plato. I mean, it's just, I don't even think too many people would hopefully dispute that, but that brings your esoteric also kind of into the picture. I don't think they had as big of a thing back in the ancient world of like a problem with this is more on the esoteric side, therefore we can't touch it or whatever. I think they were more open. And philosophy was about catharsis. You see, it wasn't just like this sitting in our ivory tower at a university arguing against someone else at another university. It was meant to actually be therapeutic. So if you're doing that, you don't go anywhere.
It's wonderful how some of the ancient lessons come in layers that manifest differently depending on where you're at, and years later, obviously, you might get different, lesson from it, right? And all these esoteric lessons, they're in there, and there's also the very, the basic one too, often the mathematical one, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I like that.
Didn't they worship you have to remember, I don't know, Ethan, do you know the Pythagoreans or Lisa? Like the Tetractys?
The Tetractys,
yes.
They celebrate the 9, but they were all about the 10. So yes, sorry, Ethan.
No, I was going to say that kind of has the 4 layers of the Tetractys being 1 point, 2 points, 3, and 4. It kind of has the 4 and the 10, and it depicts the 4 dimensions of geometry. I know that I think they really love 9, and the Tetractys kind of encompassed everything, but I have heard variously that the Pythagoreans despised 2, as they saw it as being divisive, almost like we would understand the polarization idea. And the Trinity was perfect. The 3 was perfect because of the fact that it had the 2 sides of equilibrium and the middle part.
That makes sense.
So,
I mean,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Nate.
Oh, I was going to ask you, Darren. So what was it that made you get into doing religion and reality that book?
So to be honest, that was sort of an outgrowth of my dissertation in large part, that particular work. I'm pretty shocked they even allowed me to do it, because typically with a dissertation, as you know, it's like narrow, right? Down to something ridiculously specific. Whereas I went the opposite direction. I'm like, hey, I want to try and make some massively comprehensive thing, and for whatever reason they let me do it. So that's what got me started on that project. And because I wanted to look, this might bring up another interesting point for us to discuss. So a lot of people that say they're spiritual but not religious, common phrase, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've all heard it, right? So typically what people mean by that, obviously this doesn't cover everyone, but I think in large part, they tend to believe when they say that, deep down, all the religions are the same. They're aimed at the same object and have the same form of salvation. So this might be known as the perennial philosophy. Perhaps you've all heard of that. That's in the last at least 100 years or so, how you might hear it referenced. And it's a common belief even still. And so Religion and Reality, that book, is actually going against that whole set of claims. So it's a different framework for dealing with interreligious dialogue. You see that the real problem with the idea of like deep down they're all the same is that if I'm a Christian, you're a Buddhist, we can have a conversation and it can be cordial or whatever. Maybe I'll learn something about like your temple or, you know, wherever some ritual you do, but I'm not going to be able to learn anything of ultimate importance that I couldn't learn from my own tradition, see? Because it's like they all lead to the same summit on that view. So I don't really need to have a dialogue with you. You know what I'm saying? Like I can, but I'm not going to get anything of the deepest, most profound importance from a dialogue.
If it all gets you to the same area, what's the difference? Yeah,
exactly. Its purpose was to generate dialogue, see, this perennial philosophy, but in the end, it almost makes it unnecessary. So
that's almost like I've always thought religion is just merely a language to have a dialogue with God. That this may offend a lot of people, but no language is perfect, or no language is the ultimate. No language is the right one. It just is. Just like religion, it just is. It is the way to actually have a tool to communicate with the divine. And so what you're saying is if it all gets us to the summit, that's pretty in line with kind of what I was thinking.
Well, so what I'm saying in the book is that there are different paths, different summits. Not that they're all going to the same, right? Like same, apex like you have in the perennial philosophy. If it's true that there are different components that comprise ultimate reality, and ultimate reality is more like a complex adaptive system requiring these multiple parts, now we can propose that Buddhism is focused on one or more of these parts. Christianity, Judaism, Islam are focused on a different component. If you can accept something like that, now there's actually a necessity for dialogue. Because if I'm talking now a Christian to a Buddhist, I'm able to enrich my personal, spiritual life or religious life through dialogue and through practicing your faith, essentially. And
so it's like the biodiversity of belief.
Yes. And the thing is like, okay, so if I make that claim, what's my supporting evidence? And the supporting evidence is easy to find, which is actually read all the sacred texts. A lot of people don't. So
yeah, that's what I always say too. I always tell people read the sacred text. I was just talking about that earlier today. That's the most important thing, and that's just learning the basics. That's the basic foundational thing to understanding anything is just read the basic text first. I mean, you're gonna have different translations and so on and so forth, but you'll get a better idea if you just read the text for yourself.
Yeah, you have to do that. I mean, so the text is one piece of this to build a case. A second piece is the commentary tradition. That's where you get a lot of the stuff really is coming out of like the most famous person who's giving commentary, right? On this religion, right? So that's the second thing. Then the third piece is read the accounts of religious experience from those traditions. So if you do all three of those things and then you look at the evidence, you'll find that it's very difficult to uphold the claim that they're all the same. In fact, even in the same religious family, using similar religious language to your point, Lisa, right? Like say Jews like versus Christians versus Muslims or something, there's radical differences, right? Like Trinitarian Christianity versus strict monotheism within Judaism and Islam, dietary laws for Islam and Judaism, no dietary specific laws really, I mean, for Christianity, right? So even within a similar clustered like family of religions, let's say, like Abrahamic, they're still wildly different in terms of their claims about ultimate reality and even salvation, what's required. It all comes apart, is my point. Once you start to really look at it.
I find the idea compelling, and it's almost as if we're here, different people are here for different lessons. And I find what you're saying to be very parallel with what Buddhists would say. I'm sure you've found that yourself, right? How, you know, they would agree with you that people might be more suitable for a different religion or a different path, if you will.
Yeah, I think that Buddhists are pretty generally open-minded, right? Even a dialogue with the sciences, or not even just other religions. So with like consciousness studies, more recently.
And as you put it too, the experiences of past students and the writings of past practitioners is a real important aspect of the study of Buddhism.
I mean, we're in a world of comparison. So everyone wants to, like, okay, let's just compare all these. If I want to play the comparison game, I can cherry pick, you know, and make it seem like all the religions are the same. It's not hard. But you read the whole text, like we were saying, and all these other things, and then you realize, okay, if we do our like full due diligence, we can see that you can contrast these things very easily. And that's a good thing because it shows the way to dialogue, to actually enrich your spiritual life, is what I'm claiming in the book, in Religion and Reality. And to bring in the Whitehead piece, if Lisa, is that in process theology, there is this notion of a sort of multiple philosophical ultimates or religious ultimates. So it's not like it's just God or something that creates ex nihilo everything else. So Whitehead's philosophy is like pluralistic enough that it provided an initial framework to how you can like match up the different religions to some of the aspects of reality that Whitehead's talking about. And what I did in the book is I expanded upon Whitehead and added, like, he has like maybe 2 or 3, you could say 3, and I added a couple more. I basically made the claim that there's like 5 distinct components to ultimate reality according to the religions, if you look at all of them, and that you need all 5. Because if you don't have all 5, what ends up happening, you have to collapse the function of one of those 5 back into the remaining 3 or 2 or 1. So like a lot of people, they collapse everything into God, right? God's all powerful, all knowing, necessary, all this stuff, right? And when you do that, you end up with a ton of other philosophical problems, like the problem of evil, just for one example, or free will or whatever else. So.
Did you want to? You gonna say something, Lisa? Or no.
Yeah, I was going to ask how that kind of linked in you with your paper with Penrose and the CCC theory of cosmogony, I think it was pronounced.
Yeah. So, okay, the article that you read, that makes more sense because that one is available, open access. That's not actually the one that's on like the sort of like Satanism material. It's a different article.
Okay.
But I mean, happy to touch on it for a second, which is that, so I also do work in religion and science, even to tie in what I was just saying. I said there's 5 components that make up ultimate reality, is the claim in this book. Physics, chemistry, biology. It's not just about religion. They are focused on one or more of these 5 as well. So it's a book that encompasses both religion and science, right? And religious pluralism. Now, to tie it into the article you're talking about, one thing that's been frustrating for me when you go to conferences is that when you're talking about religion and science, it's religion versus science, right? It's just basically Christians versus atheists or something like that. It couldn't be more boring. to show up at these things and hear the same arguments for decades.
That's so static. I'm surprised that it's still the main emphasis.
I'm surprised too, and I can't handle it. So that's what this this article is about. It was definitely a weird presentation. I'll tell you that. People were like, they liked it for sure, but it was not expected, because essentially what I tried to do in this article is I said, look, I'm going to assume that scientists are right, 100%. I don't believe that personally, but I'm like, I'm going to grant you all of your assumptions as a physicalist or materialist scientist, right? That all there are atoms in like fields, right? In void type of thing. So I grant the assumptions of mainstream science. And what I try to do is show that if you extrapolate way, way, way into the future, I mean, we're not talking like thousands of years. We're talking about the Earth might be gone, like way into the future, that there are statistical anomalies that all of a sudden become very relevant. So, for example, when you think of entropy, entropy is viewed as this law, right? That essentially that a system's going to tend towards disorder from a more ordered state, right? But it's not really an absolute law. It's a statistical law. I mean, if we had all the molecules in the room that I'm in right now, and it was a closed box, eventually a configuration we already have before is going to come up. A bunch of different configurations will come up, right? So the idea is that you can actually have a godlike being spontaneously develop. I mean, I don't want to get into complexities of really like how that happens, but that's what I try to get at, was showing how like even mainstream science can have implications that sound religious. Mainstream, like physics, not only just wild theoretical stuff. That's kind of what that was. It's based on Boltzmann brains. If you ever heard of that, a Boltzmann brain?
No.
Well, I don't know if we should go into it's kind of, yeah, this, it's an outgrowth of what, again, mainstream science would suggest, that eventually you're going to get to a situation where you have all these particles moving around, bouncing around, creating configurations, and that you'll have them combine and have a brain like a human brain spontaneously form, like out in the vacuum of space. It obviously wouldn't last for more than a second or two, but on a physicalist point of view, if it had the exact configurations of like of atoms, neurons that's in Nick's head right now, then Nick wouldn't be able to distinguish whether he's, you know, Nick right now on this podcast, or it's all just like essentially fake loaded memories that are in this spontaneously formed brain. Essentially. It's somewhat based off of like a twist on that whole thing. But that's probably too deep of a rabbit hole.
I like that. That's interesting. Huh.
Does it speculate? Does that theory speculate beyond like the forming of a mind? Like a car could form too. Is that 100%? So anything is possible. If it's possible, it's going to happen. Is basically. What. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a Tesla that could be formed or whatever, right? As well. So, but even the whole universe could spontaneously collapse back down into a much lower state of entropy spontaneously. It's just, people don't really talk about this stuff because they want to talk about it as they're like absolute laws rather than statistical, but they're not. A lot of them. And then that changes things. It's just, who cares really about it? It was just that it was a way to try to at least spark discussion. You know what I mean? Something different at these conferences where we're not just talking about like a Christian God versus an atheistic scenario. I couldn't handle being there.
Well, even atheists, they all have a different belief, you know? I mean, the common ground is that they don't believe in a God, but some of them actually say they just don't have enough proof for a God. You know what I mean? So
well, that's true. Let's actually, if you don't mind, brief word on atheism. I had some interesting professors at Claremont. One of them was the guy who owns Skeptic magazine. So he's one of the more well-known neo-atheists, like Richard Dawkins and in that group. Okay. And what I found was that when you talk to these people privately, they're a lot more open to alternatives. But when the camera's on, it's like, you're all effing idiots, you know, sort of thing. So and most atheists, when I talk to them in my classes, and I'm not against atheism, by the way, I could care less what you are. It doesn't matter to me. But I don't think many atheists have earned the title of atheist. That's what I'm saying. They've earned the title of a Judeo-Christians. That's what they are.
Or an agnostic, not even an atheist.
Yeah.
Very wise observation.
Yeah, because they think, hey, I refuted the primary arguments given by, you know, Christians for the existence of a God, when really they haven't even done that. They've only shown that there's a discrepancy where you can't hold omnipotence with omnibenevolence at the same time. So they haven't even fully destroyed it. But anyhow, I wonder. Yeah, go ahead.
If you were finished, I wonder, Darren. That's an excellent observation. I've noticed that too. It's almost like the atheists are even more closed-minded than the monotheists at times. I wonder, to that point, maybe, and maybe aside from that, what is the essence of the Abrahamic religions or monotheistic approach in this? What is their summit, if you will, in comparison to the other summits that one might study?
Good question. So their summit is a creator God, right? They're going to focus on like a supreme being that can instill order and value into the world, into the system, basically. I mean, to make it as short, I guess, as possible. Whereas, say, you know, a Buddhist might be focused on a totally different component, say something like the Alaya Vijnana or storehouse consciousness, where they're talking about how all information or memory might be like woven into some aspect of the fabric of space-time or outside of space-time even. And that might be a different thing, than just talking about this being that's trying to provide order in the system. Or, I mean, another way to look at it is there's a disordering element, sort of like a chaotic randomizing element in the world. If we think about more quantum mechanics, and there's certain religions that might focus more on that, or certainly various sciences that focus on that. So those are maybe, I don't know, a couple examples come to mind. But yeah, the Christians are definitely focused on the God piece, right, as a supreme necessary being type of thing.
What was some of the reasons why you got that feeling that's what they feel is that one supreme being?
I mean, I think that's all they talk about. Right? I feel like that's all they really are writing about. And I can tell you this much too: if you try to modify that theology, they get real pissed real quickly. So, for example, process theology again. Let's bring that in. Process theology does modify the more traditional, like Christian theology. For example, process theology states that God is not omnipotent. God is maxipotent, basically, the maximally powerful. But that shift opens up a whole new option. And they'll state that God is not omniscient, but is knowing only of all things that are possible to know, but not knowing the free decisions you might make in the future, say. Okay? That makes sense. That's why. Okay, so to your point, though, sorry. So for Christians, if you were to propose what I just said to a Christian, they're going to literally tell you that's not a God worthy of worship. So therefore, I reject it. Why? The only God worthy of worship has to be omnipotent, right? Omniscient. I don't know, but seems to be the case, because that's what they all seem to push for. But whatever.
No, yeah, and the reason why I asked that is because when I read the Bible, I've read many different versions of the Bible. I actually have a 1873 version that I'm going through right now, and the personalities within the Bible of these gods are all different. Neither one of these gods have the same personality. One is quick to anger. One of them is a jealous god. One of them, it could be a loving god. And unless that individual has a split personality,
bipolar,
exactly, then these gods that are represented in our Bible have the same traits as us humans. It's literally the same traits as us. We see ourselves as gods, and they see us, as whatever they see us as. But I don't think, like when I've talked to some Christians, I've asked them, why do they always talk about the one God? Because that's something you mentioned. When I think of Christianity, the only thing I can think of is how good that God, or how Jesus wanted everybody to be. Even if you was, somebody who didn't certainly deserve empathy or care or something, he made sure to forgive people and say, try to be a better person and look within yourself. And you can do all good things through you and all this, that, and the third. And even at the end, when he was suffering, he even questioned God, so it makes me understand that, every individual that's looked as a deified individual in the Bible, they have the same traits as every human that I've ran into personally in my lifetime. And I'm pretty sure you guys probably have too.
I mean, how many Christians do you know that follow Jesus? I don't know too many.
No, I still don't know any that still sacrifice animals to this day.
Well, yeah, how many Jewish people, are following what's in the Hebrew Bible and the Torah? None, hardly. Some, but very few, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Jesus's message versus what Christianity became as an institutionalized religion are hard to reconcile. And why is that? Let's go back to Plotinus for Nick, or back to all, why? Because they end up putting all the Platonic or Greek philosophy with their ideas of perfection. See, like these omnis, that's all like Platonic form sort of perfection stuff. I'm not gonna say crap. So it's, and yet they're against pagans, but it is pagan. It's dumb. If you look into the history enough. I think I love Jesus's message, because I think even from we could talk about even from like an occult point of view, which is like, he's trying to put you in a lifestyle that if you were to live that lifestyle, it's a lifestyle that's extremely difficult and intense. And how do you create a phase transition in physics, right? How are you going to move something from like ice to water to steam, temperature and pressure? If you don't have that, then you've got nothing. So he's not talking about faith, right? In the way of like how the Jewish people are talking about at the time, which is like a contract, like a legal contract. I follow what you said, you give me the land and the descendants, right? He's not talking about that. He's like talking about a much, much harder form of faith and poverty and all these things. And if you were to live it, it would presumably create a soul transformation. It would alchemize your soul, basically.
His internalized esoteric lessons are profound, right? When you take the religiosity out of it, it's very individual, meditative empowerment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I have nothing. I've never had anything against it. I do have something against the prosperity gospel and these American mega churches.
I was going to say, it's often with the monotheism, it's like one way to perceive God. As you mentioned, with the financial pursuits, it's like that's their perception, that's their lane. And they all, all the different monotheism, they're all worshiping the same God, just in their way. Sorry, Lisa.
No. I was agreeing with the mega church comment. That's all.
I mean, how many times do they need to say you can worship God or money? It doesn't really suggest that God is money, but then again, for a mega church, it kind of is. So, oh well.
Well, I was just saying this earlier. Robert Alter, and it reminded me of the Hebrew Bible that he translated the Hebrew Bible, and I remember reading like in the notes little section that he has in there. He says the first time that gold is actually mentioned or even thought of is when it has an association with the number 666. 666 and gold had a relationship. And what's interesting about that is that you can see that our whole types of civilization was to was looking for some type of gold or some type of metal, and that became a monetary gain, and that's what it is still to this day. You know, the Templars and the who was it? Jesus, I can't even think of their name right now. It come to me for a second, but yeah, basically just that the monetary gain within that is the idea of, you know, the monotheistic rule, because somebody wanted more than somebody else, and they had to push that other person out.
I mean, it gives you power, no doubt, to have money, but it's a really shitty low form of power. I mean, even if you're a billionaire, it's not that amazing compared to other forms. So it's not the best God.
Looking like a true scholar.
What was that?
I tried to compliment you. I said, spoken like a true scholar.
Oh, okay.
A wise man. I wanted to ask, the combination of your different studies, of course, them being similar, but have you looked into this psychic phenomenon relative to the experiences and in, you know, the realm of the dead, what the Egyptians would call it, or whatever it might be called, and in relative to the telepathy tapes and the experiences referenced there? I'm assuming you're familiar, but if you're not, just
I've heard about these telepathy tapes thing. It's more of a recent. Is this?
It's a pretty recent podcast series, and it starts off with exploring the psychic nature of nonverbal autistic children. Yeah. And it leads into this really strange phenomena of these people kind of sensing the presence of spirit, if you will. And one that it just made me want to inquire of you some of the experiences that you might have studied relative to people having experiences with heaven or God or spirits.
So yeah, I mean, I'm certainly open-minded to it, right? And I do think.
Sure, I don't mean to say one way or another. Sorry to interject. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. So I can even tie a little process piece onto this here. There's a guy named David Ray Griffin, passed away a little while back, who was one of the bigger sort of process theologians in the latter half of the 20th century, and he did a lot of work on parapsychology and showing, like, you know, all the different studies and just how impressive and right, what are the odds to be able to achieve a lot of these results from things that have been done going back to like Duke University, right, and then up to more recent ones with Cornell University and stuff that had been done by this guy. I thought it was like Daryl Beams. I can't remember all the names, but yeah. So I mean, I think there's something to it. I just think that it's a little too like fickle for us to, with science, it's hard because you want repeatability, right? So I think it's real, but it's to be able to achieve it with certainty or something, right? Like every time, that's where I think it's just not happening.
Sure.
It is for someone, but it hasn't not happening for me.
it's tangible in the sense that it's mental and thought experiences, but that's not tangible really, right? I mean, they can be measured to a point, but
it's not repeatable. Like
right.
Let's even go back to the Jesus thing. It's like if I reach some very rare state, maybe I tap into psychic, right, phenomena. But unless I'm able to maintain such a like peak experience level state, maybe then we can't do it. And so I feel like that's the trouble, is like you're trying to run an experiment, and how many people are you going to test at that moment in time when they tap that level of, right, like spirituality or something? It just seems hard to do. But sometimes it has happened, I think, and that's why you get results. That's my take on it, I guess.
So what was one of the more powerful lessons that kind of causes a paradigm from that book of the bringing the lessons from the experiences that you wrote?
Oh, you mean like the NDEs?
Well, I'm sorry if I'm confused, but yeah, you mentioned accepting their experiences as being real, and then, you know, getting lessons out of that instead of debating.
Yeah, so a couple things that came out of that. I mean, the big ones are, of course, like the life review. And it's an obvious way how you can incorporate a life review into like a daily reflection. It's something really simple, right? Like a daily life review type of scenario.
Isn't that a Neoplatonic or Platonic practice too? Or?
Yeah, it's not like that's anything too new. I mean, maybe tying it into the NDE thing, but even Plato, by the way, records one of the first NDEs. I don't know if you guys know that. In the myth of there's a soldier who dies, and it's on the like funeral pyre or something like that. And he goes into this very elaborate NDE experience. So I quote a lot of it in the book. I mean, I don't remember the details at the moment, but anyhow, life review would be one thing. I came up with an exercise that I thought was pretty good that I called the heartbeat of truth, that involved like a basic yoga pose that I thought was kind of cool, that came out of some of the NDE stuff. It's hard to explain without like visuals, because some of them require like the exercises that came out of it, the tools, the spiritual tools that we made. I co-wrote that book. So cool. Yeah, but a life review is like the easiest thing, I guess, to state, but not the most.
Or a daily review, you said, right? The daily review.
Yeah.
I like to do a morning intention and daily review. Not obsessively, but I guess I might be accused of being obsessive. But that I find is a helpful kind of layout and practical look at the day.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a good simple practice. I mean, I think so I guess I could try to explain, haven't thought of this in so long, so I wouldn't want to mess it up, but one exercise that was at least I'd never seen before anywhere else, that I guess none of you would have ever heard, because I'd like to think I made it up. But then again, we were talking earlier about how everyone thinks they made something up and then they got it from somewhere else, right? So I don't know, but you can tell me if you've heard it before. So it would involve, at the end of the day, before like a life review type thing, lying down on a fairly hard floor and lying on your chest with your legs extended, but your right leg in like a 90-degree angle. So the idea is that like you got like a half frog kind of stretch going on the floor, and it puts a little bit of pressure on your heart on the left side by doing that. And so you can feel your heartbeat. If you were on like a yoga mat or just straight on the floor, you can really feel your heart in that situation. And I called it the heartbeat of truth, because the idea was that as you do your daily review, right, at the end of the night, about like the good deeds you practice, let's say, if you actually did enough good deeds and you slowed your heart rate way down, so you kind of meditated before this, even at a slow heart rate, like this pace or something, right? If you actually did a lot of good deeds, you would be able to recall them on each heartbeat. But the idea is like the heart, even at its slowest, is like better than the mind at its fastest. So if you try to like make up things like that you didn't really do, you're going to miss the beat. See what I'm saying? Because like your mind can't even make up some bullshit story fast enough. to keep up with that pace. But if you actually did them, you can recall them on the beat. So it's a way to literally like a metric for spiritual progress of like becoming a better person. I mean, how exactly I tied into the NDE part, I'm now I'd have to go into back and looking at it, but that was like a tool, a spiritual tool.
That's a really neat tool, and I love the sentiment of how the heart travels faster than the mind can. The slowest heart can travel faster than the fastest mind. It just reminds me it's way easier to heal the mind through the body than through the mind, right? However, many different ways there are for that.
So that's something I can give you to tap in my memory here.
Is the thing that you were describing, the way that the legs would be bent, done, is that kind of like the hangman card?
Yeah, kind of. So like you'd be looking off to the right. You'd have your arms kind of flat, like in like a goalpost way, and you'd look off to the right, and then your left leg is straight, and your right leg is in like a goalpost, like a 90-degree shape.
Oh, okay.
Yo, that sounds like that one tarot card that we was
yeah, that's what he's saying, right?
Looking at
the hangman or whatever.
No, I mean,
yeah, hangman. Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one from that show we did the other day.
Yeah, like Odin or whatever, right? Is kind of in that, I think, in some.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Odin. Yeah, see, yeah. You remember that, Nick, right?
Yeah. I'm just thinking like that symbol that he was saying. I don't know why. It just sounds like something else I've seen. I'm trying to think.
In yoga, it would be like half floor frog. That might not be helpful for anyone. But if you know like some of like contemporary yoga asana, like that's what I guess it would be closest to.
So the hangman could be considered that too, though?
I mean, I guess that's the closest thing to the shape, but
damn, because that's so familiar from that cult that was from that town.
What cult are you talking about?
I can't remember the name of it.
Definitely not a part of any random like desert cult.
No, it was the two girls that were killed in the woods.
Oh,
and,
the Delphi.
Yeah, the Delphi murders. Yeah, and the tarot cards that the guy was explaining about the hangman.
Yeah,
that's why I clicked in my head.
Yeah,
well,
that was
hopefully
with
there's no association.
Because it was talking about Odin. Because it had
there was done like Norse runes and stuff too, and that's why.
Yeah.
I think I was actually.
Someone murdered people and put them in like Norse runes by the murder or something?
Well, they were in weird positions and sticks were done kind of like runes and stuff. It was, it was a couple of things going on in that little crime scene.
That's got to be a questionable thing too, because if it was sticks looking like ruins, it's like how many sticks were around? Not to be a naysayer, but it's like if there's a lot of freaking.
No, it's just when you was talking about the description on how the legs would be and stuff like that. That show immediately popped into my head because that was part of the description on how one I believe one or if not both the girls were positioned.
Yeah, the only reason why that position was chosen for me is because it's comfortable enough and it places a slight amount of pressure on like the left side of your chest, so like it compresses a little bit on the heart, so you can like feel that heartbeat, right? You can really hear it, feel it, and it's easier to do the exercise. That was sort of the only reasoning behind it.
I don't want to say that they've done it before, but just to point out to the validity of having a posture that's not the same on each side, Qigong healers will put you into postures that are not necessarily that one, but similar in construct, depending on your ailment.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm sure that the poses, it's not like, they're basic poses, right? So you're going to probably get them in a bunch of different systems. And obviously a lot of these poses in yoga, we don't need to go down this rabbit hole, I don't think, but they have no basis in historical, like a lot of these standing poses that you do in a vinyasa flow class, those are 150, maybe 400 for some of them years old. The Buddha's not out there doing, the historical Buddha is not out there doing warrior 1 to warrior 2 or whatever transitions. It's not, they're doing seated meditation, type of thing. So like modern yoga's its own little thing. I owned a yoga studio and opened one. So, I mean, I was way into that world up until recently.
Wouldn't you say he probably did a series of martial arts being a prince, though, right? It might not have done.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, he was a great archer as well. So I'm sure he did some martial arts.
There you go.
You know, he was supposedly the best, literally. I mean, if you read it, it doesn't sound humble. A lot of the things, basically, like, he's the best at this, he's the best at that, and he tried all these. And speaking of your hangman thing, that was a thing from the Shramanas in like 500 BC, hanging upside down from the tree. That's actually a classic yogic technique.
Oh, wow.
It's called the bat pose or something. Or I don't remember what they called it back then. But yeah, that was a thing that was done frequently. So standing on one leg or hanging upside down by one leg from a tree, or even two legs sometimes. So, yeah.
That's wild.
Weird stuff.
So
I don't know if you guys want to talk about Satanism or
yeah,
anything else.
I was just gonna say. So do you want to get into that? Yeah, because we're like an hour, maybe keep this like an hour and a half. So I figured give you some time to talk about that if you wanted to.
Sure. So this recent paper I worked on that's kind of called like dark sector gods. The simple idea is this, that like up until recently, most physicists do accept dark matter as being a thing. It's the mainstream. The debate is is it made out of? Like, right? What does it actually consist of? And more recently, there have been good suggestions that you can actually have what's called atomic dark matter, meaning like dark matter that interacts with itself. And the idea is that if you can have something like this, maybe you could actually have an entire realm of consciousness or other sort of entities that we don't have access to, basically. And the tie into Satanism, of course, is that like Setianism, Temple of Set, Order of Nine Angles specifically talk about these isolated intelligences that are in some sort of wherever dark realm. And I was trying to propose that like perhaps it gives a little bit more credence to some of their claims that they've made. Not much more, but a little. I don't think you need to have criminal behavior necessarily to somehow communicate or tap into this power. But I think you'd have to use gravitational waves to try and communicate with it. That's more like physicist answer. But maybe there's something about consciousness, right? If there's consciousness there and we are conscious, maybe that can be a bridge that's not a problem. And so maybe you can, through ritual, or maybe, who knows, maybe even through crime, I don't know, or a star game or whatever else things that the Order of Nine Angles might be into. I definitely will say I do not advocate, since we're recording this, I do not advocate really that a lot of their methodology, but who knows? It just was an interesting thought to me, and that's what made me write the paper. That I thought about, here's some new religious movements that kind of could benefit from some of these new insights in physics. That's sort of the short answer on it.
Yeah. Regarding that paper that you're saying, because I posted the abstract for everyone to look at, why would it only be through gravitational waves? Or would it be only through gravitational waves that you could communicate with these entities in the dark matter realm?
From the physics perspective, it's just because gravity is the only force effectively shared at a non-negligible level, like between our realm and the dark sector realm. And it is possible to have there are gravitational waves, but the idea of us being able to like generate them to have some sort of coded message, like there is a way you could encode effectively a message, but we're not there yet, anywhere near there on like the power of physics to like make this sort of device to create gravitational waves in a certain pattern like that could maybe be picked up. So, but that's just like the physics side. Again, maybe consciousness studies, right? Maybe you don't need that at all, and you can just tap into them through meditation. I don't know.
Or indeed.
Or, yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know where you guys stand on that.
It makes me think that the power of consciousness is moving through gravity.
Yeah, there you go.
Theoretically,
that's what I kind of look at it as. I think magic is kind of defying gravity in a sense.
What is your take on magic? Since this is that's definitely your part of your channel.
I guess in the sense that I was thinking of it that way, kind of going against gravity, I would be looking at it in, I guess, like an NDE, or the fact that like you can exist into the air, not in your physical body. Like your soul could actually leave your body and not be constrained to being stuck here and grounded.
Yeah, I mean, so how do you guys think that magic, if it works?
Well, that's just my opinion. I can't say that's for all of them.
Well, do you guys think that there's a way to enhance the probability of it? Some sort of enchantment spell or whatever taking effect?
For me, I thought it was meditation.
Yeah, I think words are powerful. If you use them wisely, affirmations are definitely powerful.
I think neurolinguistics, right? So, sorry, Tyrone.
No, go ahead.
You please finish.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I think so, because of the simple fact that you can talk yourself into getting whatever you want. Now, that doesn't mean that you can say I'm gonna get a Lamborghini, but a Lamborghini is something that's materialistic that you don't really need. But if you speak on, hey, I'm gonna be a better person today, there's a conscious decision to be a better person. There's a conscious decision to make a better choice in some of your decisions that you make. Take a breath, and one of them is good for a good example is Ethan knows this very well, is meditation, just breathing. If you're angry, I've heard that if you could just take the time to breathe, take that breath for that 10 seconds, 20 seconds or whatever, that helps you make a better decision than you would when you're in that fight or flight mode.
Yeah, well said. I was going to add on that neurolinguistics, whether, as Tyrone pointed out, how we talk to ourselves and to others, can almost be a magical approach. I was also thinking, Darren, you being a yogi, I practice yoga and Tai Chi. It's all about dealing with gravity. Tai Chi is all about dealing with gravity, staying balanced, even in oppositional experience or situation. So and what you said made me think and dread the idea that we're going to be fighting gravity even after this realm. I just
yeah, it's a fun thought. Where do you stand on it, Lisa?
I think, Nick, you were saying something. I wanted to hear your final thought on that.
I don't remember. Sorry, I don't remember what I said last. You can go.
Okay, well, maybe this will help you, Jared. So Nick and I have spent numerous discussions, because I've always asked him, like, what is this? What is that? I come from a more academic training, scientific base, but, basic research type. So this whole realm is new to me, and I am trying to be a sponge and learn everything. But in a lot of the discussions with Nick and hearing his definitions, to me, it seems like magic or mysticism is the bridge between science and religion, science and spirituality. And so magic is the bridge. Like if you watch the Disney movie Coco, the Rainbow Bridge that connects the afterlife people and the people that are on this realm, I would think that's magic, in that it somehow allows, whether it's good or bad, whether it's white or black, it allows for that connection.
So let me ask you all this. Do you think that the information that you would be manipulating one way or another to create a change in reality that you think that information's woven in space-time itself somewhere, some way, shape, or form, and you're accessing it and altering it, putting in some code or however you might want to look at it, using a sigil, I don't know, whatever, right? But, or is it space-time itself not fundamental, if you will, right? And that there's, and you're somehow accessing something outside of space-time that then gets programmed, if you will, somehow back into space-time in some projection or something like that.
Well, I don't know what I'm doing necessarily, but what I will sometimes envision is accessing the power of one particle to manifest a butterfly effect and keep it rolling towards the idea I'm trying to encompass. Other times I will implore the universe that it's merely doing what it wants by doing X.
So are you trying to say that you convince it that it's already the case that it is that? Like basically to like alter the memory somehow?
If it is ever something that I, put forth to be real, I make sure that it is in alignment with universal values, if you will, to be broad and general, and I'll kind of, charm the universe.
Okay. So there's a limitation on what you would be willing to.
Oh, I would never manifest anything negative. And I don't think that, that's a good idea, just karmically, energetically. And I don't think the universe really wants to help anyone do that. But I don't know magic in total. There is obviously black magic. But, with that is, there are costs. So yeah, I like to, if I'm going to use these ideas, change one particle and set off the domino effect or the butterfly effect and go from there. Or again, just if it is something I'm trying to put forth, make sure that it's in alignment with things, and that's how it could manifest.
All right.
That was interesting.
Yeah, I don't know where I stand on on a lot of the dark or black versus white, spectrum of magic, or whether it's all just shades of gray, right?
Mm. Yeah, I think you
Type
get a
of
little
scenario.
hard to start defining that. I mean, a lot of times the way I try to say it is a difference, I guess, would be like if I was to go into a meditation and some breathing techniques and try to have that, I guess, NDE, or if I was to do a ritual and create a talisman to try to get a raise up my job, the one where I had the NDE, I would say, was white magic, and the other one was black magic. Because I'm affecting the world outside of myself now, and I'm trying to bend something to my will. I'm just affecting me when I have a conversation with God to leave the body.
But how could we ever know any of our even good intentioned changes? Let's say they work, right? So how could we ever really know, playing off Ethan your butterfly sort of almost, a sensitivity to initial conditions or something? How could we ever know like some of the ramifications, right? Especially if everyone in a Whiteheadian process thing is, they use this term called prehending. If somehow like we're basically internalizing what other people have experienced and thought.
It's a great question. I think that's kind of what I was saying, is that I try to make sure maybe that it's even not for me, right? Like if I'm going to change a particle and set it off, it's going to be in the defense of someone, right? Or maybe, right? That's an example where it's like, you're all right. There's always like, well, are you sure that person was worthy of defense or whatever? There are certain situations that there are, morally correct choices, but you're right. Especially if it's selfish, or not even selfish, but just self-centered, it could definitely have some black or gray, even if you think it's white.
I got a quick anecdote for you on this. You guys might like, if you don't mind hearing.
Go for it.
This was me versus 75 witches at a conference. It's quite the experience. It was not the intention to be me versus anything. I was invited to speak on a very specific thing, like how could process philosophy, how can it explain occult concepts and magic, like if you were to plug it into like the process philosophy paradigm. That's what they just wanted me to present on. So that's what I did. And they didn't like it at all, because the lady who was the keynote speaker, who I will not name because you will know her probably, this world of witches, but she was basically like, you basically just gave a recipe for black magic. That's all this was. This is like a presentation on a recipe for black magic. And I was like, correct me if I'm wrong, your presentation had to do with like love spells. And I'm like, so what are we talking? I'm like, this person doesn't love me, but I'm going to do X, Y, and Z to alter this situation, take away their will somehow. Like, how's that not falling under the definition of black?
That's great example of how, yeah, if it's self-will, it's kind of at least borderline, if not more so.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just a good example of how, like, it's easy for a lot of people, I think, to, like, frame it. It's certainly not you. I hear what you're saying, Ethan, but, like, a lot of people might try and, like, carve out a fine line, I think, between the white and black side of stuff. Right.
I like that. I like how you put that. I should have said love spell instead of a raise before at my job. Because
I was not invited back.
Good, that's a good example, though. That is interesting. That's funny shit. That's like, I mean, like what I was saying before about that type of magic. I mean, I would tell you the truth. I mean, I guarantee you probably 99% of everything that those people there are doing, especially if it's like probably like Wiccan based, it's probably like technically it's all just trying to get people to do what the fuck you want.
That's the vibe I got.
Or obtain something, a money spell or something, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's all like selfish shit.
Yeah.
It's all fear based.
That Abraham almost sacrificed his own son. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even God who told him to stop. It was an angel that came and told him to stop. So if that angel would have tripped and fell somewhere, Isaac wouldn't be here.
Yeah. I do want to say, in case there's any Wiccans listening, I do think there is value in that stuff. I just think it's just like every other thing with occultism and magic, it's misunderstood. So let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm interested in it, but I'm interested in it on like the mechanics of it and what actually might work, and not trying to maybe sometimes like have some like moral wrapping around it, like a Wiccan thing, this threefold return or whatever they've got, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what it is?
Yeah, if you do something bad, it comes back to you threefold.
Yeah, karma times 3. Yeah. I guess we can call it.
Yeah.
Type of deal. Arbitrary, random thing they threw in there.
Was there anything specific that she said? Like, what is your take on why they deemed it black magic?
I think because of the fact that I was trying to like it was putting it in this new system, and the way I was talking about it as more just like, this is how to make things work, as opposed to ever suggesting like, you shouldn't do this part though, or you should do that. Or I guess maybe they didn't like that I didn't have some, threefold law of karma type of thing wrapped into the speech, basically.
Well, you probably didn't mention crystals or lavender either, so.
There was probably a lot of crystal, yeah, I'm sure, and some of the other speakers, stuff going on. It's very new agey.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, I assumed.
I've dealt with a lot of that in the yoga world, obviously, too, with like cult. I've definitely had some cult experiences.
Oh, yeah, yoga can get like that.
And the SoCal yoga world, right? That's.
Oh, yeah, hotbed.
Yeah.
I'm like 10 miles away from a lot of them if I go south or north. In the yoga world, certainly a huge breeding ground for all that stuff, right? And for the occult, like say like people kind of dabbling, right, their way in, but they don't think that they think they're doing whatever with crystals or oracle decks or whatever the hell they're doing.
Oh, it's just a way to sell art. So then I wanted to ask you, I'm not putting you on the spot here because it's like, oh, I wonder if this guy's into weird, creepy shit.
You can ask me any weird thing.
Is there stuff that maybe that, like when it comes to the occult or the esoteric or whatever, that maybe you are into, or you kind of study on your own, but you haven't actually like put into books or done a paper on? Is there like your own interests that you're kind of like delving into just for yourself?
Yeah, there is actually.
Oh, yeah.
And this kind of will just tie in actually off of this whole yoga discussion. So Tantra, without getting into too much detail on what that is, there's something called neo-tantra, and neo-tantra is definitely like this whole like tantric sex, how to improve your sex life sort of stuff that you've probably heard before in books or whatever. That I have an issue with that because there's a lot of charlatans in that particular space. Like let's go to Costa Rica.
Sex
for
involved.
A retreat.
I mean, come on.
So what I've been working on lately is I have a really, really strong background in the texts and like the methods and the why of Tantra, and also like different yogic techniques. Had a lot of good mentors and stuff too at like SDSU, one of the main guys in the world for like Tantric studies. So what I've done, like currently my current book project, is I've created this entire system that I'm looking forward to sharing with the world in book form and also through podcasts and things. But I want to do that when I share a lot of it. I want to do it with my partner, my life partner, and also that I've worked the book with her. Her name's Summerlin Harrington. She has like an MA from SDSU and anthropology of religion. But we put a lot of work into this so that people don't feel they need to like have a guru. Like we're in an age now where, think about it, the age of man was way too long, 100,000 years, I don't know. However long there's been like Homo sapiens or longer, right? The last 20 years, women have risen up and it's great. But we're entering the age of AI and machines. So we need to essentially, I feel like, kind of more come together and have ways for human connection. The ways for human connection that aren't going to be like led by some spiritual nut job in Mexico or Costa Rica, right? On a retreat. So I'm trying to put together this system that incorporates any and all elements to the degree that like there's nothing that this creepy guy could possibly teach you at one of these workshops that isn't going to be in this text, and you don't need it. It's like,
it's a great perspective, Darren. That's awesome.
That's interesting.
Tantric sex and relationship ideas and sorry, I was just saying that's a great idea, but it's like a relationship kind of counseling and tantric sex kind of ideas, or meditative sex coming together.
Yeah, so it's essentially, though, it's going like a step by step. Like in the West, everything's linear, right? We think in a linear way. So that, okay, I do A to get to Z, but once I've done A, it's done. Once I'm off to D, E, F, I don't need to reincorporate that earlier step. And so the general principle, like the core principle behind all of this, is that there's like feedback loops more so. So like things that might have been done earlier on in the process need to be repeated so that you broaden out the base as you're climbing up to the pyramid, right? To get higher. The trouble with the way of the Western mind, it's like just like this like skyscraper straight line thing. And it's no wonder that we don't achieve more like spiritual satisfaction from sexual states, right? Because it's all being done with the wrong intention and goal, sort of. And so the whole thing is giving these interesting, like step by step, but also recurring sort of steps that get brought in to create a sense of connection. It isn't even about sex only. It's about like, we are so disenchanted in this world, but we're also now disconnected. So we need to have ways to reconnect and not feel like I have to go somewhere and learn from some weird guy and then it goes horribly and now I'm never going to trust anyone ever again, you know, type of thing.
Yeah. Fucking, traumatized too.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of just the basics of it. Happy to talk about it in detail because it's a whole system and it's definitely novel. Like kind of like that little heartbeat of truth thing where I told you it's like a weird little exercise. This is much more involved and it's not something that you would have heard.
Well, I don't want to reveal any Freudian slip of my mind per se, but I love the idea of the circulation rather than the linear kind of goal acquisition, right? It's all about circulating the energy, doing it again, doing the different aspects of lessons and refining them as you repeat them.
Yeah, I mean, as one simple sort of exercise, and that is just one of the little things in there. Some of the stuff is going to come off as weird to maybe the Western mind, especially, but like for example, like a breath exchange situation would be extremely binding. Like if say you and your partner or something, right? Like if your partner exhales out completely, right, and holds empty, and then you are holding full there, right? And then you effectively like kiss, for lack of a better term, right? Mouth to mouth, where you then do a breath exchange. Like that's something extremely intimate, you know, that builds a lot of connection. I mean, that's but only one little piece of it as an example. But that might be weird to some people. But hey, weird is fun, right? As well.
Yeah. I wonder how much of it is that people are lacking true intimacy, and not sexual intimacy, but actual intimacy where the connection is where one ends, the other begins, and so forth. And when you talk about loops, I think of the toroidal field, in that when both come together, the toroidal field has a completely different loop, so to speak. It's almost like when you talked about the breath, there's a dualism. There is lack of and full of there, and then the exchange. And I don't know why, but I thought like the paper that I was referring to was talking about, you had mentioned the consciousness of eventually forming God. And then your other paper that you just recently released, you're talking about how the dark matter, which is opposite of, I guess, light matter, forms a dark entity. And so it's like these reoccurring loops of give and take, of dualism. And it reminds me of the universe creates things in pairs or dualistic pairs. And you see it all the time, whether it's plant life, animal life, or anything like that. And it's almost like the universal rule that where something happens the opposite and something else happens, like the butterfly effect that Ethan was talking about. And at least within the animal world, there is no right or wrong. It just is. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, yeah, to bring it to the occult, how many times do they say make the two one? Right? And you make the two one, and then the one can essentially dissolve into the infinite. You know what I mean? Type of thing. It's in all the texts pretty much, whether it's in Western or Eastern stuff. So
I know that Nick has covered this a couple of times with like the alchemical marriage. It's the joining of the opposites, I think, right?
Yes.
I mean, the OTO, like I said, probably and there might be more appreciation for some of these things. I don't know enough, but like.
Oh no, yeah, that would be probably. Yeah, I mean, he was Crowley was into looking at that stuff supposedly. So.
Yeah. So, but how many people know about the OTO? Or even if they know about it.
Well, they'd be better off just reading your paper and not going to the OTO at all. So. Because again, you might be ending up in the weird situation.
You said it, I didn't, but yeah, there's always the risk when you're going somewhere else.
That is true. Well, then
For
that
sure.
is like, you know, you don't want somebody else telling you what your experience is too. I think you need to figure that out on your own. So
Yeah, and again, it doesn't have to be sexual. Like, I mean, you can. A lot of it's preliminary stuff way before you'd even get to sex itself, and just those preliminary things, if they were done with repetition with your partner and stuff, would be, I don't know, I would guess it's got to be better than a lot of talk therapy. It's very somatic based, right? Rather than all this cognitive.
Interesting.
So, yeah. But that's all more to come. I mean, like I said, I'm you know, in the future, certainly more than happy to do that. I know that Summerlin, my partner, would be also an important resource. Like, I don't even feel comfortable talking about it solely, right, as just the male perspective. Feels like it should be the two of us. But I mean, I can speak to it in broad strokes and maybe a couple specific examples. But it's important to hear, I think, the female side and perspective on it.
Oh yeah, completely different side. For sure. You got any other thing? Is that the only thing? Like, well, anything else that you're writing, or is that, you know, that's it too? Is what you're saying?
That's kind of, at the moment, that's sort of the only thing. It's pretty big, I guess, project as is. Yeah. I published a lot in the last like year and a half, or things that are coming out. So I got a little burnout, and the things were very, as you've seen, bizarre and, I don't know, cognitively demanding, I guess I'll say. So happy to have a little bit of a rest period and only focus on the one project at the moment. The other thing I am doing is I do have a YouTube channel called Two Truths with an S, Two Truths channel. And I put out videos every week or so that look at Scientology, Satanism, Egyptian rituals to bring back people from the dead. It's all over the place, like stuff to do with religion and spirituality. So I'm still working on that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but those are the two big projects at the moment. So yeah.
Very nice. Before we wrap it up, do you want to just go over the books that you have written and the stuff that you have out there that's available?
Yes, sure. I mean, the book we were talking about mainly today is called Religion and Reality. So that's out there, available on Amazon. If you check it out, I'm sure just put in Religion and Reality or put my name, then you'll find it pretty easily. Then Lessons from the Afterlife for a Happy Life is the other one that has the NDE, accounts. And that book's good for people, I think, that want more of like an easier introduction. If people want more of like the academic or hearing about a novel way to talk about religion and deal with religious pluralism, Religion and Reality is the book for, of mine at least. Or they want to learn about like, metaphysics and all that. But if you want to have something that's more like a self-helpy, workable system that incorporates a lot of religion, but also near-death experiences, then the Lessons from the Afterlife for a Happy Life, that one's a good starting point. Those are the two main books, that I've got out.
Okay. Awesome. Do you want to let anybody know where they can contact you at, or is there anything else that you want to promote before we wrap it up?
Sure. Anyone can reach out to me at, you're going to love this since we talked about process theology is at yahoo.com is my email. So shows how long I've, I guess, been involved with that. So, and if anyone ever had any questions on what that is, I'd be happy to go into more details too on that. But it's a very interesting form of theology for people that are looking for an alternative, something that incorporates religion and science, and can also even incorporate all the different religions under its framework. It's a really powerful philosophy. But yeah, my email is processtheology@yahoo.com.
Awesome. And before we wrap it up now, I'll let the other rejects let everybody know where they can find themselves at too. Lisa, anything you want to say?
Dr. Darren, thank you so much for covering the topics that we were pretty much just throwing at random at you, and you were answering so thoroughly. So I appreciate that. Fellow Rejects, great to be on the show with you again. And thank you, Nick, for having me on for this guest. And the only thing I'd like to promote is the Occult Research Institute.org. Some of the Rejects, Ethan, has contributed to the website in literary form content. So if you can find us there at occultresearchinstitute.org. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Tyrone.
Hey Darren, that was actually pretty good. I took a lot of notes. I was looking at some of the stuff that from your book, basically the blurbs and stuff about your book, and I'm very interested in it now. I have them in the cart, so I'm definitely going to be reading them probably in the next 3 or 4 months. Very interesting what you shared. I believe a lot of the same things that you believe in the confusion on the religions and stuff like that. I actually do deep dives in that. I do have one question for you. I always ask people who study religion this question. Do you believe that the New Jerusalem Bible is the most accurate Bible out there for us to understand the Bible?
There's a question for you. So, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get close to accurate enough to what I want. I mean, I use the Greek,
Okay.
But I think that almost all the ones in English, I guess the New Revised Updated Standard Version, however it's called, is pretty good in terms of academic rigor. I'm not as familiar with the one you described, so I wouldn't want to speak to it one way or another. But I mean, right, the harsh truth is we're dealing with copies of old Greek texts that many of them were fragmentary, right? That they had to kind of harmonize to even put together the Bible. So that's a whole story, right? And journey in itself. I definitely would advocate people getting a Greek, what's it called? Interlinear or something I might be called, version where you've got the English, the Greek, the transliteration of it and all that, because I think that's a great reference. There are so many things that are mentioned in the English versions that kind of distort, like the word repentance being a big one, coming from metanoia in Greek. And like metanoia in Greek doesn't really mean repentance, but 7 out of 10 English Bibles will have it as repentance. And that's pretty important because John the Baptist, Jesus, Paul, they're all talking about this term metanoia. So if it's being translated incorrectly, that's like their whole mission statement. It's just a classic example. But I can't speak to the version you are talking about because I really don't know.
I appreciate it. Yeah, Nick, thanks, man. This was a very informative. I appreciate you for letting me have on. Everything that could be found on me is at my website, rebirthoftheword.com.
Awesome. Thank you very much, my man. And we got Ethan Indigo. What is going on, sir?
Darren, that was awesome. Thank you again. As Lisa pointed out, thanks for answering all our questions that your work inspired. Super interesting and thorough, great research that you've done. Ethan Indigo on all the usual social media, and as Lisa pointed out, occultresearchinstitute.org. I'm coming out with new writing here and there. And Darren, again, thank you. That was really interesting and inspiring.
Well, I want to thank all of you. Honestly, it was a really fun conversation.
Hell yeah.
So I appreciate you having me on.
No, that was great. Thank you very much, Darren. Sure, I'll probably get you on for the NDE and maybe talk about some other stuff. Definitely got some interesting stuff.
You guys want to talk Tantra ever too? So we can go, maybe I can get Summerlin on. We can go deep dive on that if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely sure we can, like I said, get you back on and talk about other things. Yeah, and I will, if you want, Darren, after the show, if you want to send me any links for me to share, I will put those down in the show notes for everybody. But yeah, thank you very much again. I thank everybody who jumped on the show and joined me. I appreciate you making time and joining us. And that's the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.